Hi ladies, it's MJ. Okay, so I wanted to come and talk to you guys a little bit. So I needed to do a frequently asked questions. Some of the frequently asked questions are, and this isn't even a question, let's start out with a statement. Some of you new moms are concerned about having a doula versus having a midwife. So this is the most common thing that I hear is, what people are confused a little bit about the differences between a doula and a midwife. So I feel like I need to kind of touch on that first. So let's start there. So the biggest difference, in my opinion, of a doula and a midwife is that midwives are going to be handling your medical. So medical includes anything clinical, okay? So when I say things clinical, I'm going to give random examples of clinical things. Your blood pressure, taking your blood pressure, taking your temperature, your heart rate, vaginal checks, delivering the baby, things like having conversations around what's happening with your body in the sense of assessment. And let me dig a little bit deeper into assessment. So for people who aren't medical, don't have a medical background, they can truly understand what I'm saying. So when I'm talking about assessment, I'm speaking of medical assessment. Basically, when somebody's doing an assessment, they are looking into what's going on. So you tell them your symptoms, you tell them what's going on with you, and they basically do an overview of what's going on with you to try to figure out and pinpoint what's happening. So for instance, if you are in labor, right? You're in labor, but you're not 100% sure if you're in labor. And you call a doula and say, hey, I'm not sure if I'm in labor right now, but this is happening. And the next question you're asking her, well, do you think I'm in labor? Am I in labor? So this is somewhat of an assessment. This doula would have to make an assessment, and doulas don't do that. That's not what we do. So that's a kind of an overview of what clinical versus assessment versus doula versus midwife. So your midwife handles all your medical things. And the reason I like to make the distinction and make this clear is, one, there are so many people that are still unclear about what doulas actually do. And another thing is that there are a lot of moms who need more emotional attention, and they're looking for their midwives to provide that. And I will be honest with you, I know and have worked with amazing midwives, but midwives are predominantly handling your clinical things. I do believe in people doing what they're best at and what they are positioned to do. Midwives can absolutely hold space for you emotionally. They can absolutely listen to you, and they should. And all of the midwives that I know, they do this very well. Like, even as a patient, I will go and see a midwife. When I was younger and I needed to see someone, my mother was a nurse, and she would send me to see midwives or advanced practice nurses, right? Not to say that one is better than the other, right? In terms of like physician versus midwives, but that was my mother's preference. And she preferred midwives, and she would prefer me to go to see the nurse practitioner, so that it's a different model. Nurse practitioners, they operate under a nursing model, and physicians operate under a physician's model. So distinctly knowing the differences when you're getting ready to hire a doula, either ask the doula about what her scope of practice is, or research the difference between an OBGYN, which is usually a medical doctor, versus a midwife, which is usually a traditional midwife who's had traditional training and gone to midwifery school, versus a certified nurse midwife, which is an actual nurse, right? They're advanced practice nurses generally. So Those are the difference. And then you have a doula, which is a non-medical person. Now, doulas come from a variety of backgrounds and a variety of walks of life. You have doulas who also are massage therapists, who may have come from medical backgrounds like myself prior to becoming a doula. But one of the things you have to understand is every profession has what they call a scope of practice. And within your scope of practice, that determines where your limits are. It's kind of like a rule book. So basically a book of rules that have boundaries so that you don't step outside of your boundaries based on your skill set, right? So when you train to be a doula, doula work actually has a scope of practice. Nurses have a scope of practice. So those are your boundaries. Those are where you don't go. So when you are interviewing a doula or you're talking to a doula and you're trying to find out what she does, doulas don't deliver babies. I've had a number of people call me and they're really confused. They're asking if I can show up at their house. They're having a home birth and they would like me and them to just be there during the baby's birth. I personally do not do that. I will not do that. Why? Because I'm not qualified to deliver a baby. Okay? Even as a nurse, even as a medical professional, that is not what I'm qualified to do. And in my work, in my line of work, my priority is safety of mom and baby, okay? So if I'm not trained to deliver babies and that is not within my scope of practice, I don't do that. So this is why it's so important for you guys to understand what does a doula do versus what does a midwife do. It's also important for you to understand the differences so that you can choose the dream birth. Right? So generally there are 3 options for birth. Some women choose to have home births, some women choose to have birth center births, and then there are other women, which are like 90%, approximately 90% of women birth in hospitals. They prefer hospital births. So these are 3 different models, let's just say models, I'm just using that as a term, for how you could have your baby. And depending on where you live, and the laws in your state, and I am not a lawyer, I don't play one on television, so you would probably need to talk to somebody about that, about what's acceptable in your state, right, in terms of like home births and things like that. So there is a little bit of research that goes into having a baby, right? One of the things I love to tell my clients is that we prepare for all sorts of things in life, and we put lots of energy and time and resources into those things because we see them as important, right? When it comes to birth, it requires some groundwork. Resource gathering. So that's the next thing I want to talk about. This moves me into my next point. Resource gathering. So doulas do that. We are able to gather a number of resources for you. These are like allied professionals within the birth world. For instance, chiropractors, midwives, yoga studios or exercise, whereas we can't make recommendations and we really are not giving you a true referral. We do a lot of times make connections with people in the community, other professionals in the community that are allied with the birth world. And so there are resources available and we can provide those resources for you. Something else that doulas can do is provide evidence-based information to you. We cannot make decisions for you. So I do have a lot of people that come to me, and one of the main things I see is they're like, I had a traumatic birth experience before, and I really want to hire you to speak for me during my birth. A good doula will never take your power and speak for you, right? She just will not do that. There's so many different options and ways to make sure, to ensure that you get your birth plan and your dream birth ideas communicated without the doula taking your power. Your word and your ability to speak for yourself, you and your partner or your birthing circle, is sacred. Nobody should have the power to make decisions about you, your health, your baby, and your baby's health, okay? This belongs with you. A good doula will provide you evidence-based information. She will provide you support, both physical and emotional support, and she will ensure that you're able to get your goals and objectives of your birth plan met so that you can have the dream birth that you desire. She will not take your power, she will not speak for you, and she will ensure that you're respected throughout the entire process, okay? So that hits on the second thing in terms of resources and basically relegating your power, right? Your power is yours, it remains with you. It should remain with you at all times. My third point that I want to point out is we talked about where you might want to have your baby and thinking in terms of where you might want to have your baby. That's going to help you to make a decision about how your doula supports you, right? So if you're having a hospital birth, your doula support might be a little bit different and it might look a little bit different than if you're having a birth center birth. Your doula support might be a little bit different if you're having a home birth. Those support are different all the way across the board. Now, third point I want to get to is the different types of doula support. So you have a birth doula, you have a postpartum doula, you have a full spectrum doulas. There's even death doulas. There's so many different types of doulas. So when you are interviewing a doula, it's important to know exactly what you need. Do you need birth support? Do you need birth and postpartum support? I myself am a birth and postpartum doula. Some doulas are just strictly birth, some are just strictly postpartum. You have fertility doulas. There's so many different types of doulas. So being specific and kind of understanding what you want is important. If you don't know what you want, then it's probably a good idea to have a conversation with the doula, have them explain to you what services they provide, and then from there that may make things a little bit easier for you. So that is a little bit of this. I will come back again with another video. This one's gotten long, it's at 12 minutes. So I will see you guys on the next video.